Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinikka Waugh, and I am so delighted to welcome you to today's edition. This is in our continued mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help us have even better workdays so that together we can co-create better communities. I am delighted to welcome with us today our guest, Christine Samuel. Christine, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Sinikka, for inviting me to be here, and I'm grateful for being able to, speak and become the guest for the podcast.
This is just a delight. Christine, we have begun to work together and collaborate on some fun projects, and we've met through a mutual acquaintance who was a mutual acquaintance. So it's been fun to see these connections. I just delight in connections and seeing how our networks continue to expand, especially when we invite opportunities for that and when we pause for a moment and see how we can continue to serve and continue to see where those connections are, where we find common space and common interests and common desires to serve and bring out the best in each other. So this is just, this is such a treat. So I'll introduce just a little bit, and then Christine, perhaps you can tell more of your story. So the things that I know so far about you, Christine, I have been delighted in just your focus as a coach and as a trainer and a facilitator. The things that I have seen already in our conversations, your passion for really understanding change, transformational change and inner work, and really understanding that connection with what's going on. You and I started talking about the idea of the user experience and understanding that space and understanding who is in front of us. And that came out through mindfulness and paying attention and being present and being aware and mindful and just paying attention. And that started me to understand that you are so much more deeply informed into that, and there's so much more. I barely understand the surface of where your expertise lies. And so this is why I'm so excited to learn more about the transformational change work that you do and the inner work change that you do, and really helping people understand their inner capacities so that they can bring their best selves to work. So you use mindfulness, you use solution-focused brief coaching, you use neuroscience, you use Soma-awareness, you use ancient wisdom traditions. So I know that you're living in Toronto currently. I know that you are working on a book, Taming the Anxious Mind. So tell us a little bit more about you, Christine.
It's almost there. I mean, like things that you've been saying. The reason why I'm doing what I do is because most of all is in personal journey, basically. I came from being very anxious about everything, having a high functioning anxieties, doubting myself, and really striving become a high achiever, to do things well and there's no mistakes. And those cost me a lot of stress and anxiety, and also health and well-being. So from my pain, basically, what I experienced, I learned more about myself, about my health, about how to take care of myself. And with the user experience that I have as a background is, how can I notice the pain point and what's the solutions of the pain point? So I always look at human relation, not just external relation between one person to another, but also within myself, because within myself there is a part of me that is wanting to have control, but other part of me that wanting to be creative. So how can those two part of me have a good relationship and get what they need, and being able to mediate between those conflicts within myself? Then by understanding me, I basically having kind of learn how to understand the way others think as well. And at the end of the day, it's about understanding how our mind works, how our feeling works, how our body works. And as you know, like when we drive a car, like we need to know how the car works and how to maintain the car, because otherwise, it's gonna break down and we don't know how to fix it. So the idea is, the more we know about all the tools that we have within, the better we use it for our own good instead of being controlled by it. So that's basically my story.
So what you're bridging here is so lovely. I'm pausing for a second just to catch my breath, because for years, as I think about my own journey through business analysis and project management and working with software developers over the years and user experience folks, just the software side, right? The technical, the science side, right? The data-driven side of it. We don't talk about our feelings, we don't talk about our emotions. And when we started this conversation, Christine, as you started your story, you led with the word anxiety. And that's really interesting to me. You've bridged a gap here. You talked about neuroscience in the introduction, in the bio that you shared with me, and there's the science of that. And you shared the word anxiety. You shared like high performing, right? High achieving. I want to do my best. And even the title of this session is 5 Ways to Bring Your Best Self to Work. It seems innocuous, right? It seems harmless. 5 ways to bring your best self to work. But what if bringing our best self to work, and what if that constant desire to bring only our best self to work and always our best self to work and relentlessly the very best self causes a distress, causes anxiety, and causes something harmful? What if, right? What if there's harm there? And so it felt like even in your introduction, you were pointing to your own story as a journey in which you found that relentless pursuit of only perfection had caused something harmful. And you found some ways in your journey to show up in a way that's somehow less harmful. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting observation. And I like where you're going, because I think this relentlessness of being the best, what I found the difference is where, we live in a trauma world, right? Like we born in the trauma world. And what happened in the trauma world, when we are conditioned or raised to be the best, is we raised to be the best out of competition. So I'm the best compared to, other people, right? I'm the best compared if other people can acknowledge or validate if I'm doing the best or not. So what I found different is before, and I see this in many people as I'm running, women in transitions groups and stuff like that, is the best that we say the best to bring to work, is it based on our survival mechanism? What I mean is I need to be the best so that I can be liked, so I can feel enough. I need to be the best so I can feel successful. Therefore, da, 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 da. So when we bring best in a part of survival, right, then we will driven by fear and by lack. And when we driven by fear and by lack, what we always see is not enough. It's what's missing. And that's what caused burned out, it's this feeling dissatisfaction about work and stress and pressure and overwhelm. It's all caused by the idea behind the best. I hope that's clear.
Yes. Oh, it absolutely is. And oh, it's really insightful. So thank you. Thank you for bringing. Okay, so we're in 5 ways to bring your best self to work. And it's not from a position of in competition. And I think that's what we're going to explore. It's not from a place of lack. It's from a place of, well, let's explore it. So 5 ways to bring your best self to work. This very first one is on cultivating inner safety. What does that mean, Christine?
So, because I've been writing this book, I also noticed about what safety means. And I feel a lot of workplace, you feel safe. When you feel safe, you can explore, there's more innovation, there's more freedom to explore different solutions. But when you don't feel safe, then you don't feel like you're gonna do something, or like you're afraid. Whenever you move, like, is it safe? Am I gonna be in trouble? Is it the right thing to do? Meaning that sometimes we cannot control what is safety in the workplace, right? A lot of toxic workplace, it's because it's run by fear. If I'm a leader or a manager, and I'm fearful that I will be judged with my performance, what I'm gonna do, it's gonna affect the way I lead my team. I would lead from fear. I would try to control so that they feel the same way, because they will be in fear. So it's very contagious, fear is. So what I mean about cultivated inner safety is cultivating our own psychology, emotional, and physical sense of security. We want to feel accepted, being trusted, respected. So can we cultivate safety within ourselves, that we can trust, we can respect, we can have compassion, and we can love ourselves for the way we are? Because otherwise, if we expect it from others, they're also busy with their own problem or their own survival. So what I found, at least from my own experience and also coaching others, there's a lot of struggle that comes from our own inner critics. So if we let that loose and we feed that inner critics, giving it energy and trying to defend ourselves with our inner critics, what happens is we will not feel safe doing stuff that we want to do, and safe being ourselves, being authentic, because we are the one who criticize ourselves, not others. So that's what's very important, to cultivate inner safety.
Christine, how do we do that? What are some of the ways that you've learned to do that? Do you have any stories you can share?
Yeah. So this is another thing that happened just yesterday. I was in a group coaching session, and this woman said, I hate and I get angry when I'm being blamed. Like I just being obsessed and trying to prove myself, trying to make sure I try to defend myself, for example. Right. So now what happened is people do something, especially at work, right? If things doesn't work, and when we're like, no, that's your fault, or that team fault, or this. So we got blamed a lot. We cannot control that. And what happened is then we triggered and react to it, right? And then we said, this is not right, this is not it. And then deep down of behind those anger, this is the thing about anger. Anger is camouflage, is a mass of other feelings that is more vulnerable. For example, if I'm being blamed, what happened is deep down I get hurt, I get disappointed, I feel I'm not, I feel I'm less than anybody else, and I cover it with anger, right? And then I make stories of blaming others, and then if I keep doing that, what happened is then when I meet with my team, I'll protect myself, I defend myself, I'm not really cautious about saying things because they will blame on me, right? So those kind of relationships. So the examples of being kind with ourselves is, I can say, well, wait a minute. Every time, this is my pattern. Every time I feel I'm being blamed, I get triggered, I get angry. What is inside me? What's happening inside me? And I can say, wow, it started when I was 8 years old. My parents blame me all the time, and I cannot do anything because I'm still a child. So now I'm protecting myself, defend myself, so that I can realize, oh, it is me, the me that is 8 years old that reacting. And can I hold that feeling of, being unloved, and be with that and say, I can love you back. Don't worry, let me take care of this. And therefore, when I know what is behind all things that get me angry, get me stressed, I can be more loving with myself if I see it in more vulnerable way. If we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in a safe place, we can learn much more about ourselves and the truth, behind things that we do, because those are coping mechanisms that become a habit in our life, because that's what worked when we were a child, but not anymore right now.
They don't work anymore. Thank you. So we cultivate that inner safety, and using a word choice like cultivate, that implies that it doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like what you're saying, because maybe if I can put it in a more mechanical way, is practicing your muscles, practicing your muscle to accept yourself, because it's hard to accept ourselves. We easily blame ourselves for things that got wrong, or we blame others and we don't look at ourselves, what we're contributing to the conflict. So by being able to come back to, oh, this is it, then I'll be able to forgive myself and restart again, right? Because I think sometimes we cannot really prevent to be angry or get triggered. But what we can do in cultivate, in training our muscles, is how we can return and reset. And the more we easily reset, like the more we quickly reset ourselves, the easier we come to that place more often than before.
Oh, I like that. So I think one of the things that I've seen recently in the workplace, ways that we can help each other even in this space, I've seen it modeled really recently with a couple of colleagues, and then friends have shared stories with their own colleagues doing this. You alluded to it with the fact that we're our own worst critics, right? And we tend to be, right? We tend to be harder on ourselves than anyone else is. And so when we find someone who is verbally or out loud being their own worst critic, and especially if that person is a friend or a trusted colleague, and they've already confided in us that they're working on it, right? They're trying to stop being their own worst critic, or they're trying to cultivate this sense of inner safety. We've created a trusted space in our environment where we can say, hey, we don't talk about our colleagues that way. We don't use that kind of language when referring to our trusted colleagues. And among our friends, I have a friend who's an athletic coach, and one of his team members said, you don't talk about my coach that way. He was using self-deprecating humor, and it was all in fun and lightness, but it reminded me that we can use this to help each other. He said, nobody talks about my coach that way. Nobody talks about my friend that way. So even if someone that or someone in your workspace is trying to cultivate inner safety, and maybe they're not good at it yet, because this is practice, and their inner critic has just said, there I go again, I've failed again, or I'm doing that dumb thing again, or I'll never get good at this, or that they're doing that blaming self-talk, you can say out loud, hey, that's not how we talk about people here in this workspace. And you can maybe shoot down that inner critic, help them a little bit, reframe that self-talk. That might be a way we could help each other, perhaps.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, in a way that I think it's about kindness, right? It's like, oh, it sounds like you're not kind for yourself. You don't talk like that about me that way, right? So it's a nice reflection. And what happens is, with inner safety, it's contagious too, because when we develop our inner safety, we become more gentle and kind with ourselves. Then the word we use automatically be more kind to others. So I think it's kind of, whatever impact that you do, or inner work that you do to yourself, will impact the relationship with others, and the way you show up will be different too. And it gives that sense of safety for others to be with you, to work with you. And I think we can start from ourselves. Like, how can we create safety in a workplace? Is by allowing others to feel safe when they, work with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And many of us would say, well, I don't demand that level. I maybe not many, but I know for sure that I and other recovering perfectionists would say, well, I don't demand that level of perfection from you, only of myself. Well, hang on. If we create that inner safety around us and are kinder on ourselves, others will want to also be around us, because it's safer to be around us, because then they'll know that we don't demand perfection of anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to be kind if we not criticize ourselves all the time, because when we criticize ourselves all the time, and there's an inconsistency of treating others and ourselves, right? Then it takes so much more energy to be kind, because you have to be aware of it. But when you're kind to yourself, it's become a habit of being kind.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Christine. All right, so we are talking about 5 ways to bring your best self to work. And the first one is around cultivating inner safety. Let's move to the second one, which is about bringing play. So let's explore this. You've got lots of words here around bringing play or a playground, being open and curious. Unpack this a little bit for us, Christine.
Yeah, because as an adult, especially at work, we are too serious. Like, we feel if we do something and there's this, punishment or mistake we make, there's like a big consequence. It's in our mind, but it's not. And that's the thing about inner safety. When you feel safe within, you can experiment better. Like it's like this. When a child feels safe in the playground and the parents are there, they would play away and not have to worry about it because they know the parent's going to be there. But when they feel insecure, they will always look back and they're not there to play far because they're afraid their parents going to leave them. So the same thing with us. When we create that inner safety, the things about playing is more fun. We get more energy of work, right? We could take seriously, you go home, you get exhausted because it's all like survival, right or wrong, good or bad. But when you bring play, there's no right or wrong. And if you get wrong when you play, you can create your own rule. So you can always come back to that playfulness and be open, curious, and experimental, meaning that it has to come from you, because sometimes we have, performance review. What is your goal? It's about the goal of the objective for the company, but set a goal that for yourself that you can play in whatever you do. Therefore, going to work is fun.
That's how you have a better day, right? We spend too much time there for it not to be fun.
Totally, yes.
I love that. Be open, be curious, experiment, have a little fun with it. I'm thinking about the work in autonomy that Dan Pink talks about, where when people got to do what they wanted to do and their performance scores increased so much when they had that, but I want to do this. And part of that is to play in it because they're interested in it. They're curious about it. They're open to it. They're experimenting in it. And even if it wasn't wildly successful, they were curious about it. And that drove their performance up and their engagement up and their satisfaction up. They were better because they were curious.
Yeah. And I would see this also from the energy balance perspective. We talk about life work balance, but I feel like the underlying it is energy balance. So, you can work really hard and you think you're going to perform better when you really work really hard. But what happens is going to deplete the energy. But the play is where you generatively create that energy so that you can show up again and again with higher energy instead of like getting high and drop down so low and you have to recover and going high again. So play is a way of creating that energy balance so that you can always get more after you play.
I love it. Without that plummeting.
Yes.
Nice. Okay, so if you are just joining in, for our listeners, if you're just joining into this podcast episode, you need to go back to the beginning and hear the beginning as we learn more about Christine Samuel, who's talking to us all the way from Toronto, bringing 5 ways to bring your best self to work. We started with cultivating inner safety and moved on to bringing play. We're on to number 3 now, which is being purposeful and finding a bigger meaning. Now, this one resonates so deeply with me. This is a constant driver in who I am as a very human. So I'm anxious to hear your words and your thoughts on this, Christine.
Yeah, I think we are, as collective, we are more aware of the importance of purpose and meanings because we are a creature of purpose and meaning, and we need to have meanings in whatever we do. So the thing about purpose and find a bigger meaning related to best self at work is basically that's the key to overcome the imposter syndrome. Now, what I mean is this: when I left my corporate world and then start my own thing, things that sometimes English is my second language. I'm introvert. So it's really hard for me to put myself out there. But I found my imposter syndrome muscle is low. It's been cut off. And the reason why is this. When you put an I, me, ego, in things that I do, then the I always said, am I doing right? Am I doing well? So you're going to have fear, worry, anxiety, restlessness. You always try to measure yourself. But when you remove the I, and this is not about you, but about what you are creating, about your service in this world, then you are playing a different field. It's just a feeling of I'm doing and creating and serving and living a life. So now let's say you are, you've been doing your work for years and you get bored. It feels like there's no meaning in there. What I suggest is find meaning in relationship, because meaning usually is not related to what you do, but with your connection. Right. So for example, I coach this manager and he had problem in his workplace. And what he said, you know what? I can see this from how I love my team. But that's how keep him resilience and being able to have that sense of clarity and groundedness on how he deal with all the challenges about, financial challenge and the economy because of the COVID. But he comes from that place where, this is how I can show up to love others. So the meaning and purpose doesn't have to be direct. Let's say you have to put out data, right? Like, what is the meaning of it? I mean, you can come up with it, but it's not connected with your heart. But you can find indirect purpose, because there is relationship and connection in anything you do. And you can find purpose and meaning through that too, and serve through that too, because there's other human beings, or maybe like the missions of whatever the company is.
So I'm going to nod to the work of Dan Pink and Drive, the surprising truth about what motivates us. And he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose being the thing that engages us. So his research indicated that purpose, that being connected to something bigger than ourselves, and it's not lining some corporate pockets somewhere and stuffing someone's wallet fuller. It's something bigger, something that makes the world a better place. It's some purpose maximizer that seemed to help engage the workforce. So if you're in a workplace and you are trying to inspire, trying to connect, trying to help the people around you feel more connected, then you're looking for ways to help them see their own purpose. And if you're an individual trying to say, okay, well, how do I bring my best self? Then figuring out what is your purpose? What is your authentic purpose? How do you show up? What matters to you? What is it that drives you? And then figuring out what connects. Is it in your workplace? Is it the mission, vision, and values of your workplace that drive you and light you up? And if it's not that, then is it the mission and vision of a community organization that maybe it's not your workday that lights you up, but it's the relationships, as you said, the relationships around you, or a community service that you can do, or the way that you can earn your money doing that and then spend your money serving somewhere else, right? Maybe there's a connection somewhere else, but finding that purpose so that you have something bigger than yourself that gets you out of bed in the morning. I see it absolutely.
Yeah, and what I found is this is a very powerful, because first of all, when you really focus on the purpose, it gives you focus, right? It gives you compass. And when it gives you compass, all the like little things that used to make you feel upset or like just drag your energy, it doesn't matter anymore, because you are looking at different places. And from the purposeful and bigger meaning, this is how we all can be leaders. Because when we drive by a bigger than ourselves, we become more proactive. Now, I want to tell you a story. When I used to work, user experience was my passion. But when you're doing the same thing, you're just like, okay, what else? I want to learn something. And what I did that kind of helped me to go with where I am right now, I look around at the organization and we have mindfulness community. And I said, hey, I want to involve, and maybe, what can I do in that? And that way work become more fun, because I'm doing something that I experience, I know what to do, but I'm doing something new that is interesting for me. And those kind of help me on my work as well, and also help well-being of, my team at work that go through all the programs of mindfulness. So you always can find something that you like, something that purposeful even beyond your work. You can find something. How can you fulfill the need that is, give more meaning for yourself? And then you become a leader that is proactive, a servant leader, and that's how you explore what next for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christine. So we're on to the last one, 5 ways to bring your best self to work. Number 5 here, don't take yourself or your work too seriously. Now that one, I will confess, has been hard for me over the years. How have you made your way through that one?
Yeah, I think it's more like, from 1 to 3, it's very serious, right? We need it. We need to cultivate our safety. We need to be purposeful and have meanings. But sometimes we get too involved in it. We forget it's just a play. So at the end of the day, like when we get so intense and so occupied with something that we think about work or about challenges, just like remind ourselves, don't take yourself seriously or don't take your work seriously. It's only work. At the end of the day, it's only work. Therefore, sometimes we put ourselves, all our identity and our value, our worth to work, which is fine, because that we spend waking day working. But if we don't take our work seriously, then life become more light, right? And be playful somewhere else, so you don't have to spend all your energy at work. You can do something else with your family, because when you do that, it gives back energy into work. So it's more like a paradox. When you're not taking your work seriously, you actually can become better at work because you don't take things seriously.
So that one is a hard one, especially for any of our listeners out there who might be business owners or entrepreneurs, right? Who are growing their own or have grown their own businesses, and whose businesses are, whether they're solopreneurs or whether, like your Clear Next Step, it grew from 1 to now it's over dozens who are part of an organization. And man, when one has grown something like that, and you grew it from your own, like this was my baby, right? It was my very own thing. It's hard to not get yourself so very wrapped up in the identity, that like the identity of who is Sinikka Waugh, and the identity of what is your Clear Next Step, and how are they not one and the same. It's really, really hard to separate those strands, and super hard to not take yourself or your work too seriously if one is a serious-minded person. And I know we've got entrepreneurs listening to this right now, and I know there are friends who will listen to this episode and roll their eyes over the years that I have gone struggling with that very message right there.
What I feel useful for that, I know it's a challenge, especially it's our baby, right? We want to control it, we want to be with it, because we put all our energy in it. But the other thing is also looking at your business as it has its own personality. We're not like creating something ourselves. Even when we create business, you are co-creating all the time, right? It's you, and then something else happened, and it's like a dance. So being able to see, instead of me and this business is in me, this business is more like a team, my partner, that I can kind of interact and sometimes give them, trust them a bit. Or if you take a look at that as a business, as a being where it has personality, we like them, we have relationship with them, but sometimes we can kind of let it alone and trust it a bit. It has intelligence because we've been working on it, and bring that system intelligent, so that at least we can leave it alone a little bit, and then give ourselves, yeah, then I come back because I like having a relationship with it.
Lovely analogy. And sometimes it's like a dance, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, that's a lovely analogy. That sounds very productive. And if we think of it, how about for those who are not entrepreneurs, so those who are thinking about themselves and their work as part of their career, is it a similar analogy then?
Yes and no. I guess it's very different, because what entrepreneur, you kind of build something and it's tangible, it's yours. where the work is more like somebody else. It's more, my time is for somebody else because they already booked my time. What I found for the people who are working or in the career, the things about don't take your work seriously, it's the time where, you feel like you're not doing well. You feel like you have presentation and your presentation was not doing well or not received well. I think those bring that things in the moments of those. Don't, it's only work, I do better on that, right? In those moments where we feel like we fail, that like, don't take yourself seriously. You can start again tomorrow. It's a learning experience.
Oh, beautiful. Yep. It's just a moment. It's not the end of the world. You are not your work. This was just a moment. Don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's nice to remind us that once in a while.
Oh, I like that. So if you were just chiming in right now as a listener, you've got to stop and rewind because you need to go back to the beginning because you've missed it all at this point. So you got to go back and rewind and hear Christy and Samuel take us through 5 ways to bring your best self to work. And as we wrap this up, Christine, one of the questions that I always ask, and it wouldn't be the Even Better podcast if I didn't ask, what's making you even better these days?
I feel I don't know if it's now or maybe because this is the end of the year, I would say next year, what make me even better next year. I come out with my reflection, 3 words. The words are gonna bring me even better next year, which is connection, creation, and inspiration. And for me is, if I can stay in connection, because the intelligence come from connection, like two things become smart because it connect with others, so it can process data, receive and give data. So if I can stay in connection with myself and with others and really tune in with what is needed, that I need to show up at the moment of those connections, then I'll be more able to create because I think we are not just a maker, we are creators. Maker is like recipe, like, okay, 1 spoon, 2 cup of, we follow things. But makers, if we bring ourselves as an ingredients, our uniqueness as ingredients in our creation, so then I can become more creative and become more right in the moment, moving right in the moment, instead of like planning and doing something slowly. So moving spontaneously with the input from connections and inspiration, the ideas of inspire, right? So it's just like as simple as that, breathing to get inspiration. So I want to be able to allow myself to be inspired just as I breathe, inhale and exhale. So living in abundance, being able to know that everything is here already, and to live from that place instead of like, oh, I'm not getting there yet, I'm missing that yet, I need to get there. But like, it's a very different mindset. Like, if you always get where you want to go, everything is here now, what drive me? And in survival, it's always like, because I haven't had what I want, the lack always drive us to move forward. So this is a different world and a different thing that I want to bring my muscles to start doing, not because I have to, but because I want to and I love to. Yeah, will be it.
Sounds really, really lovely. Oh, Christine, thank you so much for your time today. What a joy this has been.
Thank you, Sinikka.
And for all of our listeners, thank you for listening in. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.